but sometimes in the documentaries is what they're doing to help these kids,
Right.
to build a bond. You know, as simple as a sucker, something this kid has never had in their life, and he's taking his time out and giving this kid a sucker or teaching them how to play kickball or whatever.
We do have that problem.
Yeah.
And people right now, they just heard what you said, and they're like, a kid that doesn't know what a sucker is? That exists.
It does exist.
You have fathers out there, unfortunately, and I'm under the mindset that all things come back to fathers. All things come back to men. You know, we can talk about single women, and, you know, sluts and everything else, but at the end of the day, the reason that they are the way they are is because of men. And there are some men that, guess what, their kids have never had a sucker.
Yeah.
There are some kids out there that don't even know who is my dad?
Yeah, sadly.
What would it be like to have a dad? And it's sad, and you see that. Okay, so I would like you to tell a couple stories, whether they're your stories or somebody else's stories. I really don't care. But when people look at firefighters, there's a stigma that goes with PTSD. Now, I'm not going to mention names, but we both know a guy that is separated from his wife right now because he has PTSD from the war.
Mm-hmm.
And he just, you know, sometimes something, boom, flips. And it's dangerous for her. And people say, well, that guy's a wimp. He doesn't know. You know, it's all
made
an
up
excuse, you
Yep.
know. But if you really know these people, you know that it is the furthest thing from an excuse. This is actually happening.
It is.
So what I'd like you to do, like I said, your story, not your story, you know, all you guys talk. I would like you to tell a couple stories of how a police officer or firefighter, when they went to go do something that emotionally affected them enough to actually draw a PTSD moment out of them.
Oh, man, I can actually attest to one myself, and it still affects me to this day. I had mentioned it earlier, was the New Year's Eve fire.
Okay.
And as we actually are talking, I'm off duty, but that was actually my phone for active 911 in the background. So I do look real quick, make sure it's not a big old fire or something like that.
Yeah, because then you'd be gone.
I would be gone if it was a big old fire, but that was just a simple medical. So, but so it's been a couple years ago. I was the officer on duty, and so back then we wasn't quite full time.
Right.
Excuse me. We was building up to that, so we actually worked 10-hour shifts.
Okay.
And then on the weekends we was on call, the officer of that day, and so I was on call, and we'd already actually, believe it or not, had worked with another structure fire that right before the New Year's came over. Flew that guy out because he got injured. No big deal. Returned back to quarters. I went back home, and shortly after, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that. I can't quite remember now. But we got toned out for a working structure with kids inside. And automatically, as soon as you hear fire, your heart jumps. And then when you hear kids inside, your heart just jumps a million miles an hour. So we're hauling ass, basically, to the firehouse, getting in the trucks. And, I mean, it doesn't matter what time of day it is. We're blowing through everything to get there.
Right.
And
adrenaline to the max.
Oh, it's a to
You're
the
going to
max.
save somebody. You're on a mission.
Yeah.
You're blindsided. You are tunnel visioned to just help.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, you're hoping all your training's going to kick in and everything. And I remember arriving on scene and looking at the fire, sizing it up, and by this time you could already tell we're working pretty much a 70% coverage of a fire, knowing that the chances of survival are slim to none. But because as soon as we pulled up, I knew whose house it was. I knew the kids inside. I just went ahead and suited up. And I remember really trying to go into the front window because I couldn't get in through the front. But trying to go in through the window, and he broke it out. And then my guy behind me was Chris Tinsley. He was trying to go in with me. And Chief yelled out and says, "Don't go in, don't go in." And I'm like, "Why? There's a kid inside." He's like, "You know better." They're not, he was trying to basically say, she's gone, without yelling it out because, you still have family on scene.
Right.
And my buddy Chris kept pulling at me. It's like, "Hey, man, we can't go in." And I was like, just let me go. Well, so then the fire ends, and we actually have to remain on scene all night long. And we finally found her the next morning. She'd actually went through the first floor into the bottom floor. And it didn't bother me then. It was only when I seen the family, and how do you tell them, "Hey, I did everything I could," or, in my opinion, at that time, I had not done enough. I couldn't look into them eyes for about a month or two. I couldn't talk to them. I felt ashamed of myself, and it took them coming up to me like, "Hey, we know you did what you did." You did everything you was trained to do. I was like, man, to this day, it still bothers me. Like I see them, and it's almost like they're judging me, even though I know they're not. I do know they're not, but there's still that thought process that it bothers me.
So there's an element of shame, even though there shouldn't be.
Yeah, I feel like I could have done more in my mind, and no matter what I do, I can't shake that feeling. I've tried, and I tried for a while there by drinking alcohol. I was like, oh, this will make me not feel any of that no more. And so that's
a cover.
It is. It's a cover. It's masking up a pain of something we've done. And kids are probably by far the worst. I hate working kids.
So it's kind of emotional for both of us. That was one of my daughter's best friends. But, I feel good that you're the one that carried her out. I don't know why that gives me some comfort, but it does. And I look at the fire department. I don't think we need to get too graphic, but I've heard stories about, things like, I'll tell you one story that I heard from a fire department man. He literally told me that he has been to fires and he hears the kids screaming.
I have never experienced that myself, but I have, been through around enough of the guys and stuff. They've heard that,
and it destroys them.
I don't know that I could actually handle that one.
It literally destroys them. It destroys their family because they can't get over it. How do I get to them? As we're automatic protectors. If you have any worth as a man, you're a protector of the elderly. You are a protector of children. You are a supreme protector of your family.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you get over that, but that brings me to the point. PTSD is real.
It is very real. I agree 100%. Would have never. Here's something that I had dealt with for a long time. My brother-in-law he was third cav. He had seen some things and stuff like that over there, and he knows I love talking to him about it because I'm a big military buff, like I said. But I think he's seen something that he knew in himself, and so we got to talking about it, and I was like, oh, yeah, you're a hero and all that stuff, and he goes, well, so are you? I said, no, I'm not a hero, I'm just a firefighter. And it was something that he said that really hit hard and made me think, and that's kind of what made me realize that we are human, and firefighters and cops do get PTSD. He was just simply like, look, I went overseas to fight a war for our country.
Right.
He said somebody has to stay home and protect the homeland. And you chose to stay here and fight the battles that we can't.
Right.
It was the simplest thing that he said, but it made the biggest change in my life. Like, wait, somebody does have to stay here and fight. Because if we all went to, because I wanted to be in the military, but.
I mean, even yesterday, we live in small town Podunk, southern Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, we had a wreck, 4 kids, 3 of them passed away.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's always something going on. Even if you don't hear about it, there's something going on. We watched fentanyl. And we watched fentanyl across the country, ripping this country apart. How many times have you had to go somewhere and you have so much empathy and the drive kicks in to save somebody? They're ODing. What do you do?
That's a hard question to answer because at some point that empathy does disappear, and I'm not going to be lying about it. We had one in particular that kept doing it, and so you don't hear this a lot, but a lot of police and fire have what we call black humor.
Okay.
And so after a lot of these gruesome, you could say, calls or fentanyl calls like that, we tend to joke a lot. And people misunderstand that because we don't do it like try to do it in the public, but people do here.
Right.
So you know how that goes. But we have a black humor. It's our way of, it's a coping mechanism.
I was going to say, is it like an emotional unloading?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've seen literally pulled out bodies that have been in a decomposing house for a month with no AC. And it's gross. It really is gross. But we tend to, when we're there by ourselves and stuff with the cops, we'll be joking. But you have to have a different sense of type of humor. There's a reason we're in what we're in.
Right.
We already, from when we were born, we're already different. We have a different mentality.
I agree.
We're still compassionate, but we also just have a way different outlook on life. So like the fentanyl guys, I've gotten to the point now where some of them, like if they're first time somebody, I really do want to help them, like do my job. Hopefully they'll get the help they need. But then there's some of them that, I've been here time after time after time. I'm like, look, if you're going to do it right.
Right.
Let's just quit calling me here and do it right, and let's not ever see you again. I mean, there comes a point in time where you just don't care anymore.
Let me ask you this. How angry, and I don't know how I would deal with this. I know I couldn't deal with the stuff that you deal with. But when you go over and over and over, and I don't, you've never told me a specific situation, but I've listened to enough firefighters to know this, that you've went to help people enough at certain areas where there's kids there. And the kids are just, left alone. They don't change their diapers. The kids are, malnourished and stuff. And you see the dad or the mother, passed out, and the drugs are really affecting the kids. How do you deal with the anger that you have towards that towards the leadership in that family for failing the children?
I'd like to beat the piss out of them, to be honest with you. I mean, there's no way if around that one. I don't know how somebody could do that. I mean, we're going to call DFS. We're mandated reporters, but it is very frustrating. Like, if you even see them in town after that call, and you're just like, you piece of shit.
Right.
That's what you think. You don't say it,
right?
Because we can't say that. We can't even talk about it outside. But yeah, that's a hard one to chew. I think about that when I go home. I'm just like, how can I help this family out without? I'd like to help somehow, but obviously can't help everybody. That's just the sad thing about it.
Well, I'm not going to mention any names because I don't do that. But there are police officers in this area that will try time and time and time and time again. Just come to church. Open arms. Just come. Hey, you need Thanksgiving meal? We got it for you. Is that something that is just here, or is that something that is really not talked about across the nation?
That's actually a good question. I don't know if it's because we're Bible Belt that it's just really something that's around here. I don't know if that's nationwide or not. I would hope it was, because I mean, I know who you're talking about, and they open door policy. They would help out in any way, shape, or form they could.
Literally, I mean, giving Thanksgiving dinners and bringing that. I'm going to talk about a specific situation. Again, I'm not going to mention names. The mother and father were at the bar. The kids were sitting at home by themselves. They brought them a full Thanksgiving meal. That's something. You know? That's something those kids are going to remember forever.
Oh, yeah. It touched their lives. And that's what you're kind of hoping it does. Even though they're not being raised right, maybe that little bit of compassion will actually have some kind of effect. Because I can remember similar to that situation. Now, I wasn't raised in a bad situation, but when my dad had cancer, he had it when I was about 12 years old and died when I was about 14. But I can remember going up to KU University and spending a Christmas with him. Well, obviously, Mom couldn't spend money on it because Dad was in the hospital all the time. And she didn't have time. She was there by his side. But what was awesome is we had Christmas. We all got together, and the people from the hospital actually went and got us all nice Christmas presents. Not just one or two. They got us, they just spoiled us. And it was then I was just like, man, that's so awesome. They don't even know us.
Right.
Why did they do this? But they did on their own free will, and that was awesome. And it touched me. It really did. And so that's why today, if I can help somebody out, I'm going to try to help them out.
So let me ask you this, because I think you're in a position better than most to answer it. Does tough love work better than empathy?
Every situation is different. Sometimes, I think tough love would actually be better than empathy, but it really just, everyone is based on the mentality of the person. Can they handle that tough love, or do they need to be coddled?
That's true.
I mean,
that's true.
I hate to put it that way, but that's the way you have to look. You have to literally judge every situation on how it's going.
So I think we've established pretty good PTSD is real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've even heard stories of firefighters showing up and it's their own kids in the car wreck.
I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah,
that is a fear.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real fear too, because things happen, life happens, and
it does.
You better than anybody knows that, hey, life happens. I couldn't do what you do. I don't deal with death well. Never have, and I never will. It leaves too many thoughts in my head, especially with young people. So thank you for doing what you do.